Welcome to another chapter. So, in this chapter, what we're going to do together is we're going to secure our access token and refresh token, let's say. We will add a bit more logic here. So, when we reload our application, we automatically sign in user because, well, we can refresh the token. And this is exactly what we will achieve in this episode. With no hesitation, let's get into it. All right, let's quickly review what we have achieved so far. Now I can go back to my log out, and then when I click, then okay, this is opening right now. I'll go here and I can sign in. This was exactly what we achieved together so far. And after login, redirection, we serialized everything. We have the ID token here, and we also can have the rest of the result like access token from auth0. So now what we're going to do together, first thing first, let's create a helper function that is going to just validate our result, because we're going to receive this result, but we need to make sure that the ID token, the result, as well as the access token is not null. So I'm going to quickly create a helper function here. Let's say, let's call it validate auth result. So that is going to be our um, authorization respond. Let's say respond. And then that is going to be returning a boolean. Let's say if result, um, we're going to check like if first of all result is null, or I can say result, no, sorry, respond. Our respond is not null, or I can say that, wait a second, this is not authorization respond. What does this return? Authorization token respond. Oh, sorry, authorization token respond. But that's good. So now I'm gonna have exactly. Now I'm gonna have access token, ID token, refresh token, scopes, token type. These are exactly what we need later. So we're gonna deal with that later. But we already parsed ID token, which the body part, which is fantastic. We'll go and check if access token and ID token both should be null. So say if ID token is not null and this one is not null. So here is the thing. This is now somehow like required. So I just make them, because that could be also like null, right? I make it nullable. So here I can now go and do that like this. So now I can say is valid, is, let's say, is auth result validated or valid. That's better. Yeah. So now what I'm gonna do, so from now I can actually do like this. So that's better. Just a little bit of refinement here. So now I'm pretty sure that when this is resulting back, so I'm pretty sure we're gonna have results as well as ID token. So that's safe now to use this the operator here. You must be very careful when you're using this. Let's move on and have the next logic. What we're gonna do here is that you might even ask, like, how do you handle error here? We'll get to that error handling part of the course. Wait for it. But for now, we will assume that every time we like log in, it's always like we're gonna have a result. But we'll consider error handling very soon. But here is what we're gonna do. We're gonna do like when we are passing to this statement here, we want to make sure that like first of all we will set our tokens locally, securely, and we also parse, and we also set some variable locally. That's for later use case, let's say. So when are we going to do that? It's in the logging section. So in the logging section, what I can do here is, instead of having all of this, I probably can just say maybe like, because I need like a generalized function. Well, I'm gonna go and actually write a function here where I mentioned somewhere that I'm gonna write a function for maybe here. I'm going to actually write a function right now that is going to set all of the variables that I need, and I want to use that. Let's look at this, how I want to use it. Let's go and implement this method somewhere, maybe here, or maybe after the validate. Just keep it here. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna just let's say we're gonna have a function, say set local variables. We will pass this result. What was the result? It's actually authorization token response, right? So better to just copy it from here, maybe. So, and in this case, when we're coming to this, actually now I will make this required, and it's always not null. I'm pretty sure when I want to come to this function, or maybe, yeah, I will, because then I will double check if probably has some, value. But we can be consistent. What we can do, we can make it nullable, and then we say here, now is the thing. I can say if is auth validate, so then I'm gonna pass my results, and then I can continue. Otherwise, we will do other things. As of now, maybe we can just have a simple string here, a returning and a string. Like, for example, if everything goes well, return success. And if something goes wrong, then return like something is wrong. Well, of course, we will handle the errors much better later. But what we will do here, we will come back to the login, and we can actually now return maybe this and pass the result. So, oh, there is actually an error here. I will move this now to this function to set local variables. And I can move actually everything here. Well, except I don't need this anymore. But that's good. So here is the things. Now I'm pretty sure in this case, I will pass my token. I also have my access token. So here is the access token, result.access token. And in this case, I am 100% sure, because I already validate that. I'm 100% sure that the access token is here. So now I have my access token. I have my also ID token parsed. Everything looks pretty good. So this access token, though, this is something that, together with the access type, we need it for HTTP requests over our API calls. That's the way that your backend can validate your API and make sure that you have a valid user, authenticated user. And they can even have like the scope and stuff like that. So better to have these maybe access tokens somewhere like here, that we can maybe define access token. Well, it can be null, set string by default, can be null. Therefore, when it's not null, that means you already authenticated your user. So I'm gonna go back to my set variable like locals. So instead of this, I can now have access token. I can do the same thing with ID token. So in this case, then whenever I need some information, I can get that. So what if we just say ID token? So I'm not gonna say auth zero, so because well, that's very generic. It's a standard thing. So I'm gonna have here, and the ID token is in fact auth zero ID token, right? The class. So these variable can be here right now and accessible. It's very good, very good. So now I have parsed, I have validated that, return this, and well, I can now say everything looks fine, log in my user, and return success. Pretty good. What else we want to do here? We want to actually make sure that when we have refresh token, we can store this refresh token securely. But how can we do that? Let's do it here quickly. We're gonna go check if result.refresh token is here and it's not null, right? In this case, we already have the secure storage. Do we define that in the root? Maybe not. Yeah, maybe we should actually do that. We need to have an instance of our secure storage. But how can we do that? Very simple. I'm gonna come to where I instantiated my app auth here, and then I'm gonna say secure storage, and I will actually instantiate Flutter secure storage. I get now an instance of Flutter secure storage. Very good. Now I can go back to my where I wanted to store everything. Here is the case, and I can now say secure storage dot. I think the function is. Let's look at that. We have a bunch of function. Right is the one that you're looking for, and look at this right now. This is in fact what you're looking for. You're looking for writing some key. But what was the key? If you have not watched previous videos or episodes of this series, don't worry. So we already defined in our constant a constant key name just to be consistent. And I'm going to use this right now. I will just copy this, say this is my key. Very good. And what is the value for that? Let's have everything formatted. The value for that is result.refresh token. So now I have my refresh token. Let's move on and I will show you what we will do next. I now can securely store my refresh token. It's very important you do this because a refresh token is very sensitive. Use data. You need to securely store it. And if you look at the right definition, you see that this is actually a feature. It does not return, it's void, but it's a feature void. That means if you want to wait until this procedure is done, so it's better to just have an await here, right? However, you also need to make this function async. So in this case, now you can simply await for writing this and you are good to go. So now we have a very good function here. There is one more change that we need to do for this function. Here is the case. So because we changed to async function, now we need to make this future. So if I go back now to login, I'm returning this, which means I'm returning what? Exactly what this one is returning. So in fact, I can now just go and say future string. Is that necessary to return such a thing? Maybe not. Well, depends on how you want to manage your logic, because we already actually set our state here. And the UI is, because it's a change notifier, is listening to this change and redirect us because we're using Go Router. For those who are coming to this episode without watching other ones, just want to quickly give you what we have done. So in main.route, we're using router, and the router is Go router. We're using Go router package, where it's handling the redirect. If user is logged in, we already defined a logged in instance, let's say a change notifier class for having this login. That's it, pretty much it. And then Go router, whenever you change it to login, you need to make sure when you have to do that. And if I go back now to my auth service, here is the time that I'm pretty sure now we are 100% having the user logged in. So maybe we can even move that to somewhere here to make sure that we are also passing this part. That's also fine. And in this case, well, is it necessary to return like a success or something wrong? Well, it's again, maybe not, but it's good to have at least some text. Well, it's better to maybe have a class of, for example, respond or something like that, which you may have message and a status code and things like that. Well, I just want to make it a little bit simple here and say, well, success, for example, in this case. We might come back to it and refactor that later. All right. So now we securely stored our refresh token, but why we have done that? The reason is, look at this right now. If I refresh, well, I am logged in, but my logged in state the state that defined for logged in, it's not changing because, well, when app is loading, I'm not gonna change that. So we need to find a way to, to set the refresh token and also make sure user is logged in and then redirect user. So how can we do that? It's actually pretty simple. So I can go back and try to have an initiate or init function. So why do we want to do this init function? The init function can be a method that is going to implement some logic. When you load your application, you call this method, and if user is already logged in, you set the state, and then user will not come to this page, to the dashboard page. Instead, they go to the authenticated page, which is the menu page, right? That's the simple logic that usually most applications have. So what we're going to do now then, in short, is to make sure we are silently refresh the token of user and make sure that user is already still is authenticated and is logged in, and then redirect to the logged in page or any page that we define for an authenticated user instead of login or the main page. So what we're going to do, we're going to define this init function here. So I said this is my function that I'm going to call it when app is loading. So that's good. Let's have this here. So here's the thing. I already stored refresh token. So we want to make sure we have a refresh token. So we're going to say we have a secured refresh token here. How can you do that? How can you retrieve that? So you can say you have a refresh token and then you read the key that you defined, which was refresh token key that we defined together. Let's make it a bit nicer. Good. So now I have a secured refresh token. First of all, you need to make sure if you are coming to the application for the first time, what is the value of refresh token? So nothing. It's null because you never set anything. You never logged in. So therefore, this is something that you need to double check. You need to double check the other way around. If it's null, what do you want to do? And there is one thing here is that, look at this here. The read method from secure storage is actually a future, which means we need to await to receive a nullable string. It might be string or null, right? This is the definition right now. So then we need to make this a sync function, and then I need to await here. Now this makes sense, and this warning goes away. But what will happen here in this case? Well, nothing. If you do not have refresh token, there is no way that you can silently refresh the access token, and then revalidate user and redirect that. So therefore, let's say we just say false, return false. Like you can't do anything. Just return even nothing. Make sure that the process is stopped. But if you do have secure token, like it's the second time user is coming and you want to silently refresh that token, because then you can extend that even for a year, let's say, or a month. It depends on the policy of your company. So you may have the user logged in for a long time if they come into your application even every month, let's say. So you can refresh and silently logged in, keep the user logged in. It's a very fantastic method, right? So what you're gonna do then is you wanna make a request if you have a refresh token to the issuer. Now your issuer is auth0, right? It might be your backend, but doesn't matter. Again, if you have not watched the theory or all of the slides about the standard of OAuth and OpenID Connect, please go back and watch my other videos about it. But don't worry about it if you don't have time to watch it. So you need to make a request to issuer to say that I have a refresh token, please revalidate everything, right? So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna actually make a request again. You need to here request a token. I will actually do everything in one place. So app auth, which we created before. So for those who are watching this video for the first time, we already created an instance of Flutter app auth, which was from the package named Flutter app auth. And that is implementing app auth, the standard and the best practices of OpenID Connect and OAuth 2.0. So we have an instance here. We already used it. Now we're going to request for a token. And what does it need? It needs a request. And look at this definition. It actually needs a token request. If I go to definition right now, I can see everything that I want for exchanging tokens. That is exactly what we need. We want to exchange token here. We already have a refresh token. We already had an access token. We want to refresh our token and exchange it. So we need to pass a token request. Let's make a token request here in this case. So that must be a token request. And you need to pass at least client token and redirect and the refresh token that you have already. So the client we already had, we already defined it as an instance, as a constant, sorry. So here is in our const.dart file where we created for those who are coming to video for the first time. So you remember we already defined them here. We already pass it from Flutter CLI by defining dart -- define. You remember, if you have not watched the other videos, maybe go back one or two more video before and watch what we have done here. So now we can also pass our redirect URL, which already defined it. So let's actually make this nicer. Good. And one tip for you, if you add this trailing comma, it just makes this formatting very beautiful. Another thing that we need to pass is to define the issuer. Usually, I want to do that, so it's important for this purpose right now. So I'm going to pass my issuer, which I already defined here. Again, in the constant. The issuer is usually the domain that you receive, and it's a full HTTPS. All right, and then lastly, do you have a refresh token? Of course, I do. So now I'm passing the secure refresh token. So look at the token. It's if you look at the token right now, it's actually returning future token response, which means I can await for this, and I can have a response here. That's good. Further down, what I'm going to do now, I can actually have, let's say I can actually again, let's see what we receive. actually we can do it all at once. Let's continue. What you receive is a token request, right? So you are now going to make sure you are going to have a success result. So let's say I'm gonna say this is my result, which is going to be, well, we can use the set local variable and pass this result. And let's look at this. What is the problem? Oh, okay. So actually, this must be token. The authorization token is an extension of a token response. So I can make this token request instead. So, and also here a token request. So we have defined two functions here. I think token request is a better choice because then we can use, you know, we can use also token request in this case, not just authorization token, because authorization token is an extension extending token request here in this case, token response. So now here the results, I'm getting the result, but what is the result of this? Then for sure, well, it's gonna be a string says success, or well, we can definitely make this boolean, for example, and to make it easier, just say like true, or we don't need to even do that. But I'm just gonna keep this success for now, and let's move on to init function. Here we go. And then here I can just say, what do we want to do with init? We want to say, well, whether now user is successfully, we set everything. Like, what does this function do? Again, look at that. It just validate your result. Access token, ID token, everything is there. Yes, good. I want to set the access token again, ID token again, result. Its refresh token again is there. Yes, please rewrite it. Then set the user login and success. That's what it does. So, well, technically, then if I come back to my init function, if I say then result equal to success, I'm good to go. So my init function can actually return a boolean here, says whether user is validated or not. But there are some problems here. We're not handling errors. Error handling is the next video. We'll come back to that. For now, again, let's make sure everything is gonna work as we expect. But next video, please continue watching. We're gonna handle errors quickly. So far then, everything looks fine. So now I can go and actually call this init function. But where should I call this function? Now I am checking everything looks fine. Now we have this init function. Where we want to call this, well, depends. Let's see. What we can do, we can call it maybe in a main. I think what we have to do, because in my application right now, user is landing on, if I look at the router, user is landing on home page. This is my default. This is my default page. However, the home page, this is home screen, has login, and that means, well, user should explicitly click sign in, but I don't want user to do that. Therefore, I can go to home screen. Very good. My home screen is a stateless widget. I may be able to call this function here. That's one way of doing that. So, or, well, maybe I can call it on, let's say, before this even. Like in main, even before the app is running. Maybe I can call it here instead. So let's do that. We have auth service instance. It's a singleton. And we're going to say init here. We will not wait. I can wait for that. But probably I don't need to wait here. I will let the application run because, well, whenever this is going to happen and it's validated, then it changes the states of the login and then it will redirect user. Well, another way that I can do here, or maybe it's something that you have in your application, is I go to my home page. I can change this to a stateless, a stateful, sorry. Why? Because then I will have initial state. Well, do I need to do that? Maybe not. Maybe what I can do with the stateless is here, I can say, this is my constructor. As soon as you have this constructor, so then call this function. That's good. That's also another way of doing that. Or if you have a full widget, so then you're making sure that in the init state, you can have this function calling. So let me give you a quick example here because I'm telling you different scenarios in your application. If I turn this to a state full widget, now I'm going to have a state here. So I can have init state. And then here is the case for calling my init state. So this is going to check and silently redirect user. So which one is better? Well, definitely depends. But I think you can just go ahead and, for my case right now, I can keep everything as it was. And in my case, I'm just going to go and do that right before run app, even before everything is running, just here. And well, maybe I don't want to wait for that, but I also can wait for it. I mean, because it can be a very fast process. It's not going to block anything, but it's also safe to not wait for it. So there are different ways to do that. That's the point. When we refactor later our application, have other states, management and stuff like that, we will handle this a bit differently. But for now, I told you 3 ways that you can call this. Again, that really depends on your application. But for now, I'll just make it like that. So now, if I refresh my application this time, hopefully, so then my user should automatically be redirecting to the menu screen. So let's do that. Redirect. Let's see. Oh, there is one error somewhere here. Oh, okay. I don't know how I just add this, but let's restart again. Waiting for hot restart to happen. So it's completing and yeah, it didn't happen. Let's see why. Let's see if actually it's coming here. Maybe I can have a breakpoint here. Let's refresh. No, it seems like it's not coming here. That's interesting. Let's see. Oh, of course it doesn't come. It's a very good thing that we discovered right now. Why do you think it doesn't come? Why do you think it doesn't come? Well, we implemented init function where we already have a login function here. That login function is triggered by clicking on this and opening up. And we implemented this secure local after we logged in. So we never, so far ever, we never ever set any refresh key. So, and if there is no key, then it's just a simple, in init function, we simply just redirect false. We do nothing. Let's actually click on this, go there. That's good. So now I'm logged in. Now that means everything is set, at least the functions for securing the refresh token in the database or the secure storage is fine. So I'm going to log out, going to this page. Now I will refresh. And this time I need to have, I will have a refresh token because my log out does not clear anything right now. So then this time when I refresh, it still doesn't redirect. That's interesting. So let's debug it together. The debugging is part of this problem, right? Secure. I want to actually make sure that we have something printed here. So let's have this hot restart. Oh, well, let's see. I have refresh token for sure. So I see the refresh token. That's not a problem. And what the problem is, guess what? And that was actually deliberate. I wanted to tell you. I'm calling this, waiting for that, and that is going to handle everything, set everything, while it's the application, the router, the listener, nothing is set yet. So you're changing everything, but nothing is set. Therefore, Go router or your application doesn't know what to do. So I need to move this to somewhere after the app is somehow running. Like, for example, if I move that somewhere here, that might work. But I think now the better approach is to call this where? To call this in my main route, the first route that the user is landing on that, which is this page, and possibly have it in the, maybe in the constructor here. So I don't need to wait for that. User might see a splash or may not. So let's take a look at that. Now I can refresh. And this time user is redirecting, but user is seeing the home page. What could be the better approach here? Is the better approach is to somehow move these logins somewhere that before user is going to dashboard, like a loading or something, and then call this, wait for that, and then load user, like having some state here, loading and unloading, things like that. So this is a better approach. Again, that depends on your application. But I think right now, the way that we handled for my application is pretty okay, because then when I refresh from now on, because I already logged in, user sees this page very quickly. The state is changing, and then they go to the home page. So stay tuned, because in later uh, episodes, when we are refactoring and having a better state management here, we will redirect. We will actually handle this much better, so much smoother. So user does not know anything. So they will come to application, but they see menu screen right away. So that's the way we're going to handle it later. Stay tuned for that. But for now, I think what we wanted to achieve, we already achieved. Let's move on to the next video. In the next video, we're going to have a simple error handling for our methods. What if something goes wrong? What do you want to do? It's not the case that always you receive success. There are always that you receive errors. You need to be prepared for that. See you in the next video, error handling.